Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 13 top 30 ranked running backs and tiers. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. We're going to be talking about our sponsor of today's video, BetMGM, a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 13 running back rankings and tiers. We begin with tier number 1 at the running back position. All 5 of these running backs, in my opinion, are must starts on the week. At number 1, we have Austin Ekeler of the LA Chargers going up against the Las Vegas Raiders in Las Vegas. Last week, Austin Ekeler was the RB number 5, and he has had 2 games back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97 as a top 10 running back in fantasy, and he's currently the RB number 2 on the season in half PPR. The Las Vegas Raiders defense is absolutely atrocious, both against the pass as well as up against the run. I expect this to be a high-scoring game, and I think Austin Ekeler has a big spot here, and that's why I have him ranked as my number 1 running back on the week. At number 2, we have the other running back in this game, Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders, going up against the LA Chargers at home in Viva Las Vegas. In all of his last 3 games, he has been a top 8 running back, and he's currently the RB number 1 on the season. Now, that might be elevated by a monster performance last week, scoring 45 points up against the Seattle Seahawks in a game in which he tore the Seattle Seahawks defense a brand new asshole. 33 rushes, 229 rushing yards, 7 targets, 6 receptions, 74 receiving yards, 2 total touchdowns, 45 half PPR points. Again, this is another smash matchup for Josh Jacobs. I thought about ranking Jacobs at number 1. Ultimately, I went with Ekeler, but again, they're both in the same tier, so they are extremely close for me on the week. At number 3, we have 9-inch Nicholas Chubb of the Cleveland Browns going up against the Houston Texans in Houston. Now, the only worry for Nick Chubb in this game is that maybe the team just goes so heavily into the Deshaun Watson revenge game factor up against the Houston Texans that they just let Deshaun Watson throw the ball a bunch, and maybe Nick Chubb doesn't have the game that we think. But then again, on the other argument here is the Houston Texans are literally the worst run defense in the NFL. Chubb was the RB number 3 last week up against the Bucs, who are actually a pretty decent defense. I think this is a smash spot for Nick Chubb, but I do still slightly worry about the fact that maybe the team wants to stick it to the Texans. Maybe Watson wants to stick it to him, and they're just going to throw the ball a little bit more than normal, because obviously with Jacoby Brissett under center, this is a very run-heavy team. At number 4, we have Derrick Henry of the Atlanta Titans going up against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. Now, the Eagles actually have one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, but that has been because Davis has been hurt. If Davis ends up playing in this game, then I would worry about Derrick Henry a little bit more. But again, when you have a running back with the skill set of Derrick Henry in the cold, once it gets cold, it's hard to tackle Derrick Henry. I have full confidence in him, even if Davis ends up playing in this game. Currently, the RB number 3 on the season, and if Davis doesn't play, this should be a huge spot for Henry. At number 5, we have Ramondre Stevenson going up against the Buffalo Bills at home in Foxborough tonight on Thursday Night Football. Damian Harris has been ruled out of this game. Pierre Strong is the backup, and now we should see a hefty workload out of Ramondre Stevenson, because last week on Thanksgiving, last Thursday on the night game, we only saw Stevenson get 7 carries. Now, he made up with that for having 10 targets, 9 receptions, 76 receiving yards, but tonight I fully expect him to get at least 10 plus carries, probably around the 13 to 17 mark, and I think this is a great matchup for him. This should be a run-heavy game from the New England Patriots, as their passing attack isn't really all that good. Looks good up against the Vikings, but the Vikings have one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL, so I think this should be a solid spot for Ramondre Stevenson. Now we move to tier number 2, headlined by Jonathan Taylor, JT of the Indianapolis Colts, going up against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas, a top 12 running back in all 3 of his last 3 games, currently running back 21 on the season. Now, prior to his return up against the Las Vegas Raiders in week number 10, it almost seems like the ship had sailed for Jonathan Taylor, that this guy was not going to live up to the ADP where we drafted him as the number 1 fucking pick in a majority of drafts, and he was going to be a bust this season. But over the last 3 weeks, ever since Jeff Saturday took over, Jonathan Taylor has been playing a lot better. He scored a touchdown in each of the last 3 games. Now, even though he didn't look amazing last week against the Steelers, he still put up numbers because he is one of the key pieces in this offense. He is the reason why this offense can move the ball. Now, the matchup against the Cowboys is not ideal, but ultimately, when you're such a focal point in the offense, I think he'll still be able to get it done. At number 7, we have Dalvin Cook, the chef himself of the Minnesota Vikings, going up against the New York Jumbo Jets at home in Minnesota. Back-to-back games outside of the top 30 at the running back position. Some people might start to panic, but again, when you have a running back with the skill set of Dalvin Cook, I'm going to continue to play the motherfucker, even if he's in a cold streak. We were playing Jonathan Taylor when the guy was shitting the bed game in and game out. You're still going to play Dalvin Cook here. The matchup is definitely not easy. This is far from an ideal matchup, but it's hard to believe that Dalvin Cook won't eventually get back on the saddle and have a solid game, because prior to these 2 down games, he was RB4, 15-8, 13-7. So we know he has that big play inside of him. At number 8, we have Kenneth Walker III. Sir Kenneth Walker III of the LA Rams, or not of the LA Rams, of the Seattle Seahawks, going up against the LA Rams in LA. I don't think Aaron Donald is going to play in this game, so this should be an absolute fucking massacre, a bloodbath by the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams defense, the whole Rams organization is down astronomical. Now, Kenneth Walker had a decent game last week. He was the RB number 11 in half PPR, but it's really just because he scored 2 touchdowns. He had 14 carries for 26 yards. 1 target, 1 reception, 13 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. But he is averaging 4.5 yards per carry. He's an incredibly efficient player. Outside of last week against the Raiders, again, that was a cupcake matchup. I thought he would have done better. But hey, 1 down game for a guy that has been probably going to end up being a league winner for fantasy football. We're not jumping off the ship just yet. At number 9, we have Saquon Barkley of the New York Football Giants going up against the Washington Commanders at home in MetLife. 2 down games in a row for Saquon Barkley. On Thanksgiving, RB19 up against the Cowboys in Jerry's World. RB40 the week prior to that. He is still the RB number 5 on the season. The Commanders defense is a lot better than people give them credit for, but again, with a running back with the skill set of Saquon Barkley, he can turn any matchup into the number 1 running back on the week game. Now we move to tier number 3, headlined by Christian McCaffrey. Now, I did have a bit of a hard time ranking McCaffrey because the Dolphins have one of the best run defenses in the NFL, and Christian McCaffrey is 100% hobbled going into this game. I expect him to play. I would be shocked if he does not play. He did miss practice on Wednesday with a knee injury. Now, with that said, even Christian McCaffrey on a fucking peg leg like he's a pirate is still better than most of the running backs in the NFL. The matchup against the Dolphins is no wet dream, but ultimately, I believe that Shanahan will dial up enough plays to get the ball into McCaffrey's hands. He shit the bed last week, RB41, but prior to that, as a Niner, running back 13 and 11. Again, the matchup's concerning. The fact that he's banged up is concerning. But if McCaffrey plays, are you ever going to have the balls to sit him? The answer is probably not. At number 11, we have Joe Mixon. Now, this is assuming that Joe Mixon plays. If he doesn't play, then Samaje Perine would move up the rankings. The matchup up against the Kansas City Chiefs isn't the best, but it's also not the worst. They're pretty middle of the road up against the run. In week number 11, he was the RB number 29. The week prior to that, though, he had a bye week, but the game before that was the game where he scored 5 touchdowns. We all know the upside is there. We all know this has the upside of being an incredibly high-scoring game, and that's what ranks Joe Mixon so high as a top 12 running back. At number 12, we have Travis Etienne, Etienne season. Last week, got hurt. JaMychal Hasty plays the rest of the game. Hasty has a good game. I think that while Etienne was cleared to play last week to come back into the game, I think the team just tried to keep it safe. Okay, let's not risk any re-aggravation. Hasty's running well. I fully assume that Etienne is going to be good to go in this game. So I'm just going to go ahead and be confident in him. The matchup against the Lions is incredibly easy. But before we get on into the rest of the running backs of today's video, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at BetMGM. If you're a brand new user to BetMGM and click on the link in the video description down below or in the pinned comment, you will receive this great offer. Again, you have to be a new user and click on the link in the video description. Now, I'm going to throw it onto the screen right now. All you have to do is navigate to the soccer tab, bet $10 on any World Cup pregame money line, and you will receive $200 in free bets as long as another goal is scored in the World Cup, which is guaranteed to happen. So place your $10 wager, and you are guaranteed to get $200 in free bets. There could be a draw in that game. No one could score, but someone's going to score again in the World Cup, so you're guaranteed to get your $200 in free bets. So please make sure that you take advantage of it right now before it's too late. It disappears, this offer, in 3 days. At number 13, we have Ron Jones of the Green Bay Packers going up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. The Bears defense is absolute ass cheeks. The only issue here is that Aaron Rodgers might be hurt, and that could definitely, not might be hurt, he is hurt, and that could heavily impact his play. But if he's hurt, you would think they would look to run the ball more. Last week, he was the RB8. The week prior to that, RB17 and 2. He is clearly the running back 1 on this team. I know Dylan scored last week. So did Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones is still the guy. I feel very confident in him. Again, this is a great matchup for Jones. At number 14, we have Alvin Kamara. Now, Alvin Kamara has been a disaster over the last couple of weeks. RB51, 19, 36, 23. That just does not cut it where we cut it. Cut it. The price is way too high. You need to cut it. It is, for the price you paid for Alvin Kamara, this has been a disappointment, right? I'm not here to say anything different. But again, when you have the running back with the skill set of Alvin Kamara, oh, he shit the bed against the Niners. Well, the Niners have one of the best defenses in the National Football League, so I wasn't necessarily expecting a smash game last week out of Kamara. This week, they get the Bucs. I don't think there's really a smash matchup either, but we all know deep down that if all it takes for Kamara is one ball to get thrown his way, and he could take that shit 80 yards to the crib. So I'm still going to continue to rank Alvin Kamara higher. If you are scared to play him, I get it, but I'm still going to play him. Next up, we move to tier number 4, beginning with number 15, Jamal with 2A's Williams of the Detroit Lions, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home in Detroit. Now, despite scoring a touchdown last week on Thanksgiving up against the Buffalo Bills, he was only the RB28. But over his last 3 games, he's scored 5 total touchdowns. Now, eventually, one of these weeks, Swift's going to score. And Swift's going to score multiple times, and he's going to go crazy. But until we see that happen, until Dan Campbell gives us any ounce of confidence in DeAndre Swift, I'm going to continue to roll out Jamal Williams with supreme confidence. I know he had a down game, but prior to that down game, RB4, 17, 19, and 9. Currently the RB10 on the season, and this could be a sneaky high-scoring game, Jags versus Lions. So I do like this matchup. The Jags defense is pretty soft up against the run, so I'm a big fan of Williams this week. At number 16, we have Tony Pollard. Now, the biggest issue with Tony Pollard is that Ezekiel Elliott is still there, and that Ezekiel Elliott's going to get carries, regardless of how good Tony Pollard looks. Now, he actually did not look the best last week, but currently on the season, he has 5.6 yards per carry. He's very clearly an immensely talented player, but the team is still going to use Ezekiel Elliott whether we like it or not. And we're just going to have to understand that that is always going to be the case. He was running back 39 last week, but we've seen him be RB1, 7 and 4 the prior 3 games to that. The matchup against the Colts is pretty solid. So again, I like Pollard, but he's in the same exact range as Zeke. Zeke's RB19 if you're listening on the podcast, and they're in the same exact tier because you know deep down that once they get on the goal line a lot of the time, even if Pollard has all this pizzazz, it's like Jamal Williams, where DeAndre Swift has this beautiful run, runs 30 yards, they're knocking on the door, and then Jamal Williams comes in. Pollard does something crazy, they're knocking on the door, Zeke comes into the game. It sucks, obviously. I still prefer Pollard to Zeke, but ultimately they are really close for me. At number 17, we have Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Atlanta Titans in Tennessee. The Titans have one of the best run defenses in the NFL, so I do worry somewhat for Miles Sanders, who scored 2 touchdowns last week up against the Green Bay Packers and finished the week as the RB number 2. A big talking point of last week for me in the running back videos was talking about Miles Sanders, because I know a lot of people are quick to quit on a guy, right? RB 38 and 39 the weeks 2 weeks prior. So that's not the best, but he bounces back in a big way against Green Bay. I think he's going to catch a couple of passes in this matchup that will be able to boost him slightly. I don't think this is going to be his best game ever, But there's also a lot worse options than Miles Sanders. Number 18, we have Jeff Wilson Jr. of the Miami Dolphins going up against the 49ers in San Francisco. A revenge game for Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson shit the bed in a big way last week. Now, he has scored a touchdown in 3 straight games ever since joining the Miami Dolphins. The matchup against the Niners is not amazing. This is going to be a tough matchup, but I think much of the reason why Jeff Wilson did not succeed last week was because he ended up getting banged up in the game. He was cramping up. They took him out. And because Raheem Mostert wasn't playing, they didn't have the 1-2 punch that they had the prior 2 weeks before that. They had Myles Gaskin, and Myles Gaskin is about as useful as a fucking broken condom. So ultimately, Jeff Wilson should be in a much better spot this week, assuming Raheem Mostert starts. A double revenge game with Mostert and Jeff Wilson. I am a big fan of Wilson, though. I do think he's the RB1, and I think Mike McDaniel is going to try to run the ball a lot in this game up against the Niners, so I'm a big fan of Jeff Wilson, but he is pretty risky, and I did consider putting him in tier number 5, but the problem is, before last week, he was RB 6 and 10, so I still think the upside's really there. At number 19, we have Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Indianapolis Colts at home in Jerry's World. 1, 2, 3, 4 straight games as a top 13 running back. So again, while we continue to shit on Zeke, I continue to make fun of the fact that he runs at the speed that grandparents fuck. He runs at the speed of tortoises having a fucking race. Ezekiel Elliott still gets touchdowns. He has scored a touchdown in at least once in the last 4 games, and he has a total of 6 touchdowns in the last 4 games. So the guy is still scoring touchdowns. And say, you take a touchdown away, then maybe he shits the bed. But until he stops scoring touchdowns, can you really rank him any lower than this? Now we move to tier number 5, and this is where things start to get more risky. More and more risky. RB number 20, Rashad with 2 A's White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the Saints. RB 15 last week against the Browns in Cleveland. I think I had him ranked slightly higher than RB 15. The matchup was really good against the Saints. Obviously, he didn't pay off in a big way. He didn't score, but he did look pretty efficient in the game. This week going up against the Saints, a pretty middle-of-the-road run defense. Uncle Lenny might play. He might not play, and that will obviously put a big damper into the situation, but honestly, with how well Rashad White ran last week, I would be hard-pressed to really tell you that I think that Leonard Fournette is clearly, when he comes back, the guy in this backfield, but that is something to monitor. At number 21, can you do something for me? We got David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears going up against the Green Bay Packers at home in Chicago. Last week against the Jumbo Jets, he was the RB22. The week prior, RB6. Tristan Ebner has honestly been a pretty big surprise for me. I didn't think Tristan Ebner would be as useful as he was for the Bears. He's their second string running back with Khalil Herbert out. The Packers typically, David Montgomery plays really good against the Packers. In week 2, he was the RB8 against the Packers. And I know, Nick, just because he plays good against the Packers doesn't mean he always will. I understand, but he has a nice long list of games against the Packers where he plays quite well. So I'm going to believe in him. Again, I don't have him ranked as high because I don't really think if Justin Fields doesn't play that, and I don't know if Justin Fields plays, I don't think he will. How good could this offense really be? And that obviously hurts Montgomery. At 22, we have Isaiah Pacheco of the Chiefs going up against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. RB16 last week, RB21 the week prior to that. I like this matchup a decent amount. The Chiefs are without Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and clearly they believe heavily in Pacheco. He scored his first touchdown since week 1 last week up against the Rams. He doesn't really catch passes, which does hinder his upside, and that's why he's sitting at RB22, and he's not like RB15. At number 23, we have Dameon Pierce. 2 games in a row where he shit the bed, but if we remember, prior to that, RB19, 12, 20, 20, 12, 6, 10. RB17 on the season in half PPR. He's clearly skilled. The Browns' defense is bad against the run. The problem is that the Texans might get rolled up like a blunt and fucking smoked in this game. They might get absolutely butt-fucked from the back without the use of any lube. This could be a game where the Houston Texans get the shit beat out of them. And then they can't run the ball. That's the problem. 5 carries, 10 carries the last 2 games. He needs to catch passes to be successful. And now Kyle Allen's under center, making things even worse. Now we move to tier number 6 at the running back position, beginning with DeAndre Swift. Now, DeAndre Swift has scored a touchdown in 2 of the last 3 games, but the problem is he's yet to crack the top 19 at the running back position since week number 2, where he was the RB number 4. The issue here again is the coaching. Dan Campbell, for some fucking reason, doesn't want to feed the ball to DeAndre Swift. The second he does, DeAndre Swift could be a league winner. He could be the reason why you win your fucking fantasy football championship. But right now, do I have any confidence in him? Fuck no, baby, because Jamal Williams continues to get the ball. They're knocking on the door on the goal line. We've talked about this. They're on the goal line. DeAndre Swift just jukes out the whole defense, does a fucking 360, gets them to the 1-yard line. Hey, get out of the game, pal. It's Jamal Williams time. Touchdown, Jamal Williams. And it's fucking annoying. It is so infuriating game in and game out. But until something changes, we can't move DeAndre Swift up much higher. Even running back 24 feels high. At number 25, we have Devin Singletary of the Buffalo Bills going up against the New England Patriots in New England. RB 34 last week up against a bad Lions defense. Now he goes up against the Patriots, a very stout defense. Currently the RB 23 on the season. I don't really think the Bills are going to try to run the ball much in this game, and that's the biggest problem with the Bills. If they are a team that's really good, which they are, and they ran the ball a lot, because that's what good teams do, they run the ball, then Singletary would be in a really good spot. But the problem is, for some fucking reason, the Bills will see success. They'll see, hey, Singletary's averaging 4.5 yards per carry. Now, again, that's not crazy. It's not like he's averaging 5+ yards per attempt, but clearly 4.5 yards per attempt is pretty decent. It's not like Devin Singletary is some fucking piece of garbage, right? But they don't give him the ball. It's so infuriating. I don't love this matchup. That's why he's deep down here. At 26, we have Antonio Gibson of the Washington Commanders going up against the Giants in MetLife. RB 18 on the season last week against Atlanta. Brian Robinson went to Pound Town. Antonio Gibson was left like a cuck in the corner watching. But prior to that, RB 15, 15, 28, 12, 16. It's very clear that Gibson has a role in this offense, especially catching passes with at least 3 targets in every game of the season outside of week 3 up against the Eagles. This matchup does reek of being pretty low scoring, so I think there'll be a decent amount of running, so I'm fine starting Gibson this week. At 27, we have Latavius Murray of the Denver Broncos going up against the Baltimore Ravens this week in Baltimore. Now, this is a matchup that isn't the best. The Broncos suck absolute donkey cock at being a organization. Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, is bad, but Latavius Murray is just the running back there. He's going to keep getting touches, and even if the team sucks, like, I'd be hard-pressed to see him finish much lower than this. Now I move to tier number 7. Now, I know Najee Harris is not in these rankings. I still don't know what's going on with Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren. If Harris misses and Warren plays, he'd be in tier 6, 5-ish. Neither of the guys would be super, like, way higher up than, like, RB 24, 23-ish. But, really, we'll wait and see what happens there on Sunday on the live stream. I do a Sunday morning live stream before the games. I'll be talking about that. And that'll be one of the bigger points of the stream. So make sure you stay tuned for that, because again, I don't want to rank Najee Harris here and then rank Jaylen Warren next to him, and then it gets fucking confusing, right? At 28, this is basically the range where you don't really want to be starting these guys. Cordero Patterson, 2 down games in a row, 3 down games in a row, really. Seems like the team doesn't want to commit to him. I talked about this on the must-sit running backs video over on the Stokastic Fantasy Football channel about how, while Cordero Patterson's a talented player, the team continues to want to use Algier. They're using all of these running backs. They have like 5 guys that had, I think, above 10% snap share last week, or 4 guys. It's bad, and the Steelers' defense is good against the run. I don't project much out of Patterson, but he does have that big play upside, which gets him inside the top 30. At 29, we have Zonovan Knight, who looked amazing last week against the Vikings. He's up against the Bears, playing the Vikings this week. He's going to be another one of those players that we talk about on Sunday, because right now it's pretty unclear. Is Michael Carter going to play? Is James Robinson just fucked? Like, is he not good? Why did the team scratch him last week? He could have easily played. He was healthy. There's a lot of surrounding situations around Knight to where I can't really stand here and fucking bang the drum for him. Well, I think he's a talented player, and I think he actually might just be the lead back in New York with the Jets. It's hard to proclaim that until we hear more on Sunday. At number 30, we have Big Hat Man, Brian Robinson Jr., who, again, like I said, played amazing against Atlanta. 18 carries, 105 yards, 3 targets, 2 receptions, 20 yards, and a touchdown, RB4 on the week. This matchup against the Giants, again, I think will be low scoring. I think there's a lot worse options than Brian Robinson, but we all know that if Antonio Gibson has a pretty decent game, Robinson will probably end up being around like running back 35 plus, and that's just not very exciting. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying today's video, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your guys' day, and as always, good boy!